Hey, good morning. I think we can get started now, and welcome to the November 17th Victim Compensation Board meeting. For those of you in the room that are appearing on a specific agenda item or wish to offer public comment, the microphones at the podium and tables are directional and require that you hold them fairly close to your mouth when speaking to ensure your testimony is captured by our audio and video equipment. For members and participants who are appearing via Zoom, if you cannot hear the presenter, please use the comment feature to note that, as staff are monitoring the comments in real time. And council, please call the roll.
Member Becton.
Present.
Member Silva.
Present.
Chair Ravel.
Present.
Item 1 is the approval of the minutes for the September 15, 2022 board meeting.
Are there any discussions, additions, or corrections to the minutes from the board?
No.
Do I have a motion to approve item 1?
I move approval of the September 15th, 2022 minutes.
I'll second that motion.
Is there any public comment on this item?
Seeing none, council, please call the roll.
Motion before the board is approval of the September 15th, 2022 meeting minutes. Member Becton.
Aye.
Member Silva.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
The next item is public comment. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that are not on the agenda. As items discussed during public comment have not been agendized, the board is not permitted to take any action on these matters at this meeting. Please note, if you wish to offer public comment regarding item 8, proposed mental health updates, or item 9, the PC 4900 case, there will be a separate call for public comment when each item is heard by the board. For those on the phone, if you previously indicated your desire to offer comments during this meeting, we will be calling on you by name or phone number. For those participating via Zoom, please raise your hand if you wish to offer comment, and we will acknowledge you and let you know when it is your turn to speak. Seeing none, we will move to item 3, which is the Executive Officer's Statement, which will be presented by Executive Officer Linda Gledhill.
Good morning. I'd like to update you on a few items we've been working here at the board. First of all, we are engaged in an exciting project with the Office of Data and Innovation, also known as ODI. As part of our efforts to get the most out of the $3 million the state budget provided to CalVCB for a 3-year outreach campaign, we have partnered with ODI for some initial research. ODI is undertaking a 6-week sprint to identify if there's a significant gap between the number of victims eligible for compensation and the number who apply to CalVCB, identify why that gap exists, if it does, and where the eligible victims are, and how best to communicate with them to close that gap, and establish accurate, reliable methods for identifying, tracking the universe of eligible victims, and understanding victims' experiences with CalVCB and whether they can be improved. The bottom line is that we want to make sure that CalVCB is reaching all eligible crime victims and having them apply. We want to learn from this. What we learn from this will help guide the work of the vendor we'll be contracting with to create the outreach campaign. And I'm excited about this effort and will provide you more updates as it continues. Another priority of mine has been to improve coordination among state agencies that have contact with victims of crime. Earlier this year, CalVCB partnered with CalOES and the Department of Corrections to launch the California Victim Services State Agency Coordination Council. More than a dozen different state agencies and departments play some role in assisting victims of crime, and the idea was to bring us all together to better understand what each of us does and how we can better work together to serve victims. We've held 3 meetings and produced a flyer listing all state services for victims, which is now posted on the CalVCB website, will be shared with all participating state entities. At our most recent meeting, we agreed to continue this effort into 2023. The discussions so far held by the council opened lines of communication that did not exist previously and provided a platform for those offering victim services to share resources, information, and ideas. It also allowed everyone involved to consider and discuss the opportunities for working together, engaging in long-term planning, and better helping victims. Most importantly, the council's first meeting revealed the great interest and need among state departments and agencies to coordinate their victim service efforts. It showed that there is enormous opportunity that exists in the state to improve our support for and outreach to victims. Further work will include identifying joint initiatives that should be undertaken, ways to maximize our resources, and how to adapt to the ever-changing victim landscape, and what other public policy changes we might want to pursue. The council will also continue to expand its communication about the many ways the state can assist victims. I'm pleased with the progress and I look forward to building on it next year. At the September meeting, the board adopted revisions to its regulations governing the PC 4900 claims in sections 640 through 646, Title II of the California Code of Regulations. We are waiting for final approval from the Office of Administrative Law, which we expect to have any day. The new regulations are scheduled to take effect on January 1st, 2023. Finally, one of the great things about CalVCB and its staff is not only do they work hard every day to serve victims, but they are generous in their donations to help them. During Domestic Violence Awareness Month in October, we collected toiletry items to provide to victims visiting the Women's Wellspring Women's Center in Oak Park neighborhood of Sacramento. We collected more than 100 bags of all the basics, soap, toothpaste, toothbrushes, as well as large boxes of other necessities. Wellspring, which serves nearly 200 women and children each weekday, was very grateful. It was an honor to go to their center and present these items on behalf of the CalVCB staff. And I want to thank all of our staff for their generosity. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Executive Officer Gledhill. That's great in particular that you're working with ODI, one of our sister GovOps offices. I've seen demos of their work and they do great work, and I think they'll help a lot to identify areas for possible improvement on the outreach side. Is there any questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, I think we can move to item 4.
Item 4 is a legislative update, which will be presented by Deputy Executive Officer Andrew Lamar.
As of the last board meeting, there were still a few important bills awaiting the governor's action. Since then, the governor signed AB 160, a budget trailer bill, which would increase compensation for crime victims and broaden their eligibility for CalVCB claims. As we've discussed, it won't take effect until July 1st, 2024, and only if fiscal forecasts indicate there is enough general fund money to pay for its ongoing augmentations and actions, and if an appropriation is made to backfill the restitution fund to support those actions. The governor also signed SB 877 by Senator Eggman, which authorizes CalVCB to reimburse out-of-state mental health providers. This bill will take effect January 1st. Finally, the governor vetoed SB 1468 by Senator Glazer. That bill would have deemed any decision by the board to approve compensation for erroneously convicted offenders to be an official finding of factual innocence, and it would have provided additional non-monetary relief. The legislature, as you know, will be sworn in early December and will get started on its next 2-year legislative session, which will begin, the work will begin in earnest in January. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Deputy Lamar, and thanks for all of the technical assistance and keeping us apprised as these bills were working their way through. Are there any questions or comments from the board on the legislative update?
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we can move to item 5, which is the contract update, which will be presented by Executive Officer Linda Gledhill.
Thank you. Board members, for your approval today, we have the contract for our bill review service, which includes the effort for the manual data entry of our bills, bill review and adjudication, and bill audit services. This contract went through a request for proposal process and was awarded to Intelligent Medical Solutions, Inc. in the amount of $3,026,250 and runs through June 2026. This is a critical part of the work that we do in paying for victims' bills. Also, I wanted to make you aware of 2 adjustments to the contracts in the informational section of your contract report. The last 2 items were placed on the report before they were finalized, and the final amounts for both are lower than what's in your binder. Those are items 3 and 4. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have and ask for your approval of item 1 in the contract report.
Thank you, Executive Officer Gledhill. Is there any discussion or comments from board members? Do I have a motion to approve item 5?
I move to approve the executive officer's execution of item 1 of the contract report, the contract with the Intelligent Medical Solutions, Inc. in the amount of $3,026,250,000.
I'll second the motion.
Is there any public comment on this item?
Seeing none, council, would you please call the roll?
The motion for consideration before the board is approval of the executive officer's execution of item 1 of the contract report, specifically the contract with Intelligent Medical Solutions in the amount of $3,026,250. Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Silva,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 6 is the proposed board meeting dates for calendar year 2023, which will be presented by Executive Officer Linda Gledhill.
Thank you. Well, time flies. So here we are again asking for your approval of the meeting dates for the 2023 calendar year. We are proposing to continue to meet on the 3rd Thursday of every other month, and the exact dates are listed in the board item. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any discussion or comments or questions regarding the proposed board meeting dates for calendar year 2023 from the board? Do I have a motion to approve item 6?
I'd move to approve the dates for next year.
I second.
Is there any public comment on this item?
Council, would you please call the roll?
The motion for consideration is the adoption of the proposed board meeting dates for calendar year 2023 as proposed. Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Silva,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Item 7 is the proposal to approve Trauma Recovery Center Grant Award, which will be presented by Deputy Executive Officer Andrew Lamar.
Good morning. I'm back here to present item 7. As you'll recall, the 2022-23 state budget provided $23 million in additional funding for trauma recovery centers. That included $5 million to create a regional TRC pilot program. The Trauma Recovery Center is an organization that helps victims of violent crime by providing trauma-informed services that include assertive outreach to underserved populations, comprehensive evidence-based mental health services, and coordinated care tailored to each victim's needs. CalVCB presently funds 18 TRCs through grants. The Regional TRC Pilot Program aims to extend TRC services into rural and underserved areas by funding satellite offices to be run by existing TRCs that partner with community organizations in those areas. The budget directed that $2.5 million be used for 2 such offices in Northern California and $2.5 million to be for 2 in Central California. On September 14th, we issued a notice of funds available announcement for the grants. The application deadline was October 28th. We received only 1 grant application in total, and it was for the Northern California region. That application was evaluated and received a passing score. The Alameda County Family Justice Center proposes establishing satellite offices in Sonoma and Sacramento counties, neither of which currently have a TRC. They would be located in Santa Rosa and Sacramento. Staff recommends awarding the Alameda County Family Justice Center a grant for $2.5 million to establish and run the satellite offices. Because this proposal would cover Northern California locations, we have issued a new NOFA asking for applications for serving the Central California locations. The deadline for submissions is December 6th. We will score the applications we receive and bring you a recommendation for awarding that regional grant at your next board meeting on January 19th. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Deputy Lamara. You anticipated my question about what we would do about the Central Valley, since there is a definite need in that area. Are there any discussion or questions or comments from the board regarding the proposal to approve the TRC grant award? Do I have a motion to approve item 7?
I'd move to approve the TRC grant award.
Second.
Is there any public comment on this item?
Seeing none, council, please call the roll.
Motion before the board is approval of the proposed Regional Trauma Recovery Center grant award. Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Silva,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 8 is the proposed mental health updates, which will be presented by Deputy Executive Officer Vincent Walker.
Morning. I'm here to propose an increase in the mental health service maximum rate and updates to the mental health. Is that better? How about that? Any better? It's good now. The California Victim Compensation Board has the authority to deal more. Okay, better? Maybe I'll just speak up. The California Victim Compensation Board has the authority pursuant to Government Code Section 13957.2 to establish maximum rates and service limitations for reimbursement of mental health and counseling services. Reimbursement of mental health expenses by CalVCB is based on definitions, service limitations, documentation requirements, and other criteria set forth in the Mental Health and Counseling Services maximum rates and service limitations for reimbursement, also known as our mental health guidelines. CalVCB's mental health provider reimbursement rates have not changed since April of 2011. At that time, the rate was reduced by 10% to address restitution fund challenges. Since then, there has been a steady uptick in the cost pressures to providers, including inflation and increased service demands due to the pandemic. CalVCB hosts regular mental health forums with advocates and providers to share information, provide updates, and discuss current challenges faced by the provider community. We consistently receive comments regarding current rate and the need for an increase. Our goal is to address these issues through partnering with the provider community, education, and streamlined processes. In doing so, CalVCB surveyed several sources to obtain current reimbursement rates for mental health treatment. Those sources included Medicare, insurance company, and other states' victims' compensation programs such as Texas, New York, and New Jersey. Listed on page 2 of the proposal are the top 5 license types of mental health providers. They include psychiatrists, psychologists, clinical nurse specialists, licensed providers, and associate providers. However, additional provider types and corresponding reimbursement rate increases are included in this proposal. CalVCB requests to increase the provider reimbursement rate by 30%, which aligns with Medicare and many other insurance carrier reimbursement rates. These proposed rate increases are anticipated to assist CalVCB in the recruitment and retention of quality mental health providers willing to treat victims throughout the state. The anticipated increase in the reimbursement dollars paid out by CalVCB will be managed through VOCA fund reimbursement. Cal VCB receives compensation dollars as reimbursements to benefits paid. The VOCA compensation formula recently increased the reimbursement rate from 60 to 75%. Cal VCB does not expect to ask for additional dollars to support this rating. Based on data collected and our current fiscal position, Cal VCB proposes the approved rate take effect on December 15th of 2022. Also included in the proposal is updates to the mental health guidelines. The guidelines outline requirements for outpatient mental health treatment for eligible Cal VCB claimants. They also provide the details of what services are reimbursable and the process and procedures providers must follow to receive reimbursement. These requirements are consistent with our statutory responsibility to ensure bills submitted are crime-related. This is currently accomplished by the submission of either a treatment plan or a treatment plan declaration page. The last time these guidelines were updated and presented to the board was on January of 2017. Cal VCB is the payer of last resort and must verify all reimbursement sources have been exhausted and that the treatment being provided is a result of a qualifying crime. Over the past year, Cal VCB piloted administrative changes to help ensure other insurances were being properly utilized and treatment provided was directly related to the crime. The major changes included updates to the provider requirements, updates to form used when submitting treatment plans and additional treatment plans, and updates to billing and reimbursement requirements. During the past year, Cal VCB conducted monthly information and training forums to communicate the changes, answer questions, and assist with the completion of documents. We heard from the providers that the revised billing and reimbursement requirements were too restrictive and causing delays or denials in payments. We also heard from claimants about the difficulties of attaining an explanation of benefits or denial letter from their insurance company. In many instances, these insurance companies do not provide this documentation as practice, causing additional delays in eligibility determinations by Cal VCB. Based on comments received, discussions with providers, and feedback from our staff, Cal VCB proposes the following changes. 1, update the requirement for session limitations prior to submittal of the treatment plan or treatment plan declaration page, and instead request the completion of verification of crime relatedness with the first billing stage. Cal VCB created a mental health billing intake form for submission with the bill intake form requires less information from the provider and will increase the speed in which payments are. Okay. 2, to assist with the content service and to ensure prompt payment of bills, mental health providers will be required to submit requests for payment within 90 days of providing. And 3rd, the mental health billing intake form will include a section that allows for claimants to certify that no other reimbursement source is available, eliminating the need to wait for an explanation of benefits or a denial. Cal VCB shared these proposed changes with several victim witness advocates and groups representing the provider community and received positive feedback. Making these updates to our mental health guidelines allows us to address the concerns expressed by providers and applicants while remaining in compliance with our statutory requirements. Upon approval, an informational copy of these changes will be filed with the Secretary of State. Here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Walker, for that very thorough explanation and for all the work that you did and the thought that you put into it and the work with stakeholders to get to this proposal. Is there any discussion regarding the proposed mental health updates from the board members? Do I have a motion to approve item 8?
I move to adopt the proposed 30% increase to the mental health reimbursement rates and to also adopt the proposed changes to the mental health guidelines.
I'll second that motion.
Is there any public comment on this item?
Looks like we have a couple of participants.
Hi, my name is Andrea Canseco. I'm a marriage and family therapist representing an agency called Centro de Desarrollo Familiar. We're located in South Los Angeles. We've been providing services for mental health services using Cal VCB funding for the past 40 years. Thank you for having us here and allowing us to share our concerns. First thing I would like to address is in terms of what's been going on over the past 2 years is what is the Cal VCB's plan to address the plan to address reimbursements victims and providers were denied due to the October 21 guideline change, specifically in regards to getting the forms in before the fourth session, which became nearly impossible when clients were participating in, for example, support groups and individual counseling, giving us 1 week to get papers in. So we have over 100 clients that have missed out on reimbursements due to this pilot program that we were forced to participate in over the past year and some. Second thing I would like to address in this proposal is that there's a telehealth policy in the proposal, and it's going back to pre-pandemic restricting telehealth to 5 sessions, then having to apply for more. According to the proposal, it states clinicians may be allowed, leaving this up to the board's discretion if we will get paid for our telehealth services beyond the 5. What will be the timeline on getting those forms submitted and approved? And when would we be able to submit the forms? Is this at the first telehealth session or the 5th? The entire mental health industry has changed, even through major insurance carriers and hospital systems. Kaiser, for example, is doing mostly all telehealth for their clients. And most private practices have gotten rid of their brick and mortar locations, switching everything to virtual. About 80% of our services at CDF are being offered via telehealth. We provide services to mostly Spanish-speaking communities where having that access to care makes it so much easier for them. And our groups in particular are being offered via telehealth only because 40 to 60% of our clients are vaccinated. South LA was one of the hardest hit regions in the state for COVID deaths. So we were trying to prevent anything like that. And now the BBS even authorizes supervision done via telehealth. So this, going back to the old telehealth rule, would put us in our antiquated pre-pandemic situation, and kind of negates what's happened over the past 2 years. Clients who've chosen the telehealth modality will be left out because we're not meeting their needs. And for this harms clinicians who've gotten rid of their brick and mortar locations. According to the rule, claimants may be allowed to more telehealth due to clinical necessity or lives in an area with no other resources. What does the board consider as clinical necessity? And we're in Los Angeles. There's plenty of other resources, but it may not be best for the client. And that's what we're really looking out for. One of the other things that we want to address is that the 90-day timeline in theory looks great. Where we have had issues is when victims witness programs apply for the client. We have about 7 clients right now waiting for numbers beyond 90 days. So if we started billing now, how would that work? And in Los Angeles County, we're required to send children's services cases to DCFS, and that takes the application process out of our hands, and we don't know what time frame they're using to get the paperwork to you guys. We have lost funds because of the October rule change because of these delays. So I want to know what the board's plan is to help clinicians and agencies in this type of situation, because it feels like we've been left out. We've attended the mental health panels and weren't even able to speak to management. So we've written letters, we've reached out in every way possible. So we would really like to hope that what I've said today will be taken into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Canseco, it sounds like there's some possible implementation issues and then issues with how some of this has been processed previously, not necessarily germane to the changes today, but that impact these organizations. So I would encourage staff to look at those implementation issues and work with the providers and the advocacy community. We have another commenter.
Thank you so much. Good morning, board members and staff leaders. My name is Ann Tran Lin. I'm the Managing Director of Legal Affairs with the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. Our organization represents over 34,000 mental health providers, many of whom are providers for CalVCB. I want to first thank the board and staff for acknowledging the importance of mental health services for victims of crime here in California. We sent in a letter expressing concerns that we have been hearing from our member providers regarding the changes that were made to the guidelines in October of last year. And so we're very happy to see that VCB is working to streamline the approval and billing process, removing the barriers to reimbursement and increasing provider rates, all of which would allow for improved access to mental health care services for victims of crime. It looks like there are still some nuances with implementation and administrative hurdles as expressed by Ms. Canseco and other providers who I believe are in attendance today. And I am respectfully requesting the board to please consider their comments. We are also very supportive of the proposal to allow for services via telehealth. This definitely would continue to improve the access to much needed care. We do encourage the program to not be as restrictive as echoing what Ms. Canseco did just state, or possibly be more lenient when determining necessity for care via telehealth. As we've seen from the beginning of the pandemic and to present, mental health care delivered via telehealth has greatly increased and played a big role in helping improve access to care, especially in rural and underserved populations and areas. I do have a question. I don't know if I can ask it now. It's in regards to the guidelines. We were wondering whether or not there could be a publication or FAQs on your website that would allow for mental health providers more clarity on various issues that they face, especially in regards to challenges in the billing process or denials of claims. Thank you so much for this opportunity to express my comments on behalf of CAMT, and once again, your considerations of our concerns in our letter and the responsiveness. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Tran. And yeah, I think that's a really great idea. I think staff should look into whether that's feasible and what sort of the big issues are with the billing process so that it makes it easier for the providers. Do we have another commenter? Nope. Okay, are there any additional questions or comments from board members? Okay, then council, please call the roll.
The motion before the board is adoption of the proposed 30% increase to the mental health reimbursement rates and the adoption of the proposed changes to the mental health guidelines. Member Becton.
Aye.
Member Silva.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Item 9 is the Penal Code Section 4900 claim of Michael Ray Handline, which will be presented by Chief Counsel Kim Gutierrez.
On November 22nd of 2016, Michael Handline filed an application as an erroneously convicted felon with the California Victim Compensation Board. Following a lengthy stay in this matter, the claim was supplemented on April 22nd of 2022. The application is based on a 1980 conviction for murder, which was vacated during state habeas proceedings in November of 2014. There was no objection filed by the AG or the Office of the Attorney General with regard to the claim itself. However, there was argument submitted by the Office of the Attorney General with regard to the amount of compensation, which is discussed at length in the proposed decision. The proposed decision recommends compensation in the amount of $1,738,240, which represents $140 per day for 12,416 days Mr. Handline was wrongfully imprisoned. Mr. Handline is represented today by Alexander Simpson of the California Innocence Project, and the Office of the Attorney General is represented by Deputy Attorney General Seth McCutcheon.
Thank you, Counsel. We'll hear first from Counsel for Mr. Handline.
Good morning to the board. My name is Alexander Simpson. I am representing Mr. Handline. I apologize on Mr. Handline's behalf. He was very, very interested in participating in today's proceedings, but he has had some unexpected health issues come up and is not able to attend. Mr. Handline is happy with the proposed decision and asked the board to adopt the proposed decision. This has been a long time coming from Mr. Handline, and November is a very interesting month for Mr. Handline. It was actually his 76th birthday 3 days ago. On November 28, it will be 44 years since the murder of J.T. McGarry, which is the reason why Mr. Handline was convicted and detained for 36 years. On November 24, it will be 6 years since his release. I just want to say that because of the length of time that Mr. Handline was incarcerated for this offense, this is something that I think is fairly extraordinary. He was in prison for almost 36 years. This award will not go to replace the amount of time that he has served wrongfully. It will go to some of the issues that I talked about at the beginning, his declining health. He has a number of medical bills that needs to be paid, and it will obviously go to his family members and to helping him in the rest of his time. So I ask the board to adopt the proposed decision in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. We'll hear now from Mr. McCutcheon from the Attorney General's office.
Good morning. I just want to point out that I am also appearing with my colleague, Deputy Attorney General John Kraus, who is also appearing via Zoom. Our office is submitting on the proposed decision.
Thank you, Counsel. So I understand this is an issue of first impression for the board in one respect, where you have a sentence that's being served concurrently, and the question is how much to reduce the award based on that other sentence. And I think the way that the hearing officer has calculated the reduction is completely reasonable, and I think the hearing officer did an excellent job researching and balancing the competing concerns. But at the same time, it seems kind of, inherently speculative to determine how long somebody would have served when they would have been released on parole. And so I wonder, both from counsel and from board members, whether there are thoughts about whether that's the right length. Because I struggled with that a bit. Again, as I say, I think the hearing officer's proposal is reasonable, but I invite comment on that.
I apologize. I didn't know who you would like to hear from first. You know, I think the issue is, as you describe it, is one that I think was an issue of first impression for many of us. I spoke to Mr. Kraus. We had kind of talked about what this might mean in terms of the case. I think from the perspective of Mr. Hanline, you know, as I said, he's 76 years old. He is not interested in an extended kind of process of litigation of trying to find out the exact number, which would probably delay most of, if not all of these proceedings past a point the relief that he might be entitled to would be illusory. And so I think the proposed decision is reasonable in that regard. I think the calculation is something that that we are comfortable with. I don't know how much farther we can go in terms of trying to calculate the exact number without, you know, an expert's opinion about how the determinate sentencing laws would work. And so I think we would submit just on the calculation.
And from the state's perspective, obviously our position in the briefing that we filed, or the memo we filed in July, was that the burden was on Mr. Hanline to show the extent of his injury. Obviously, as the board notes, this is a unique issue, given the overlap over 1977, the ISL and DSL and all that. So we recognize there's a certain amount of speculation that goes into it. That being said, though, I think that the hearing officer's resolution here of 2 years makes sense to us as a resolution, given that represents the midterm on the grand theft. Obviously, Mr. Hanline was never going to be subject to a parole hearing, given his murder conviction that trumped the theft conviction. But I believe that the parole board, under the rules, Title 15, Section 2166, would have retroactively calculated his parole date on the grand theft at the midterm. So that lines up with what the hearing officer recommended. So for that reason, we think this is a reasonable resolution.
Thank you both. Are there any comments or questions or discussion from the board on this item?
Chair, I would only comment. I understand and share your concern, but I think based on the comments that have been expressed so far, what is being recommended is a reasonable solution for everyone involved.
Thanks, Member Becton. I think your perspective on this is particularly valuable. Okay, do I have a motion on item 9?
I would move to adopt the hearing officer's proposed decision in the Penal Code Section 4900 matter of Michael Ray Hanline.
I would second that motion.
Is there any public comment on this item?
Seeing none, council, please call the roll.
The motion before the board is adoption of the hearing officer's proposed decision in the Penal Code Section 4900 matter of Michael Hanline. Member Becton.
Aye.
Member Silva.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, council. The board will now convene into closed session under Government Code Section 1126 sub C3 to discuss numbers 1 through 163 of the Victim Compensation Program. And as a reminder to board members, please turn off your cameras and audio inputs prior to dialing into the closed session. The board is reconvening into open session under Government Code Section 11126 sub C3. Do I have a motion for numbers 1 through 163 of the Victim Compensation Program?
I'd move to adopt the proposed decisions in those cases.
Second,
Council, please call the roll.
The motion before the board is approval of numbers 1 through 163 of the Victim Compensation Program. Member Becton,
aye.
Member Silva,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thanks, Council. Is there any other business before the board today? Right. Seeing and hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move adjournment of the meeting.
I'd second.
Please call the roll, Council.
Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Silva,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
The next meeting is scheduled to occur on January 19, 2023. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See you.